Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Wynna Wong. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Anti-epidemic kits are to go out to all Hong Kong residents this month. And Ukraine's president says it is time for peace talks with Russia. New COVID cases in Hong Kong have dropped below 20,000, but health officials urge the public to continue with social distancing measures. The daily death toll from the virus remained above 200. Maisie Mock reports.
Hong Kong reported 16,597 new COVID cases today as the number fell for the third day. A little over 9,000 were found positive through rapid antigen tests and the rest from PCR tests. There were 14 imported cases from Indonesia and Italy.
We have observed a slow decrease in number in recent few days. This may not represent all the number of cases in the community because we know that Omicron can be asymptomatic. And also, the spread of the illness is related to the social distancing measures. So if we increase social activity, for example, people go out and gathering, and the number may rebound.
There were another 243 COVID-related deaths, 182 in the past day, and a backlog of 61. The youngest was a 30-year-old whose health deteriorated quickly. The patient had a deficiency that affects red blood cells. The hospital authority, meanwhile, gave a clarification on the use of oral drugs to treat COVID, saying medical staff will distribute the pills based on a patient's condition, age, and vaccination status. So far, molnupiravir tablets have been given to 8,500 patients, while 1,000 received Paxlovid. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The government is joining forces with community groups to distribute anti-epidemic kits to all residents this month. Officials are also stepping up vaccination efforts in homes for the elderly, where the vaccination rate has reached 55%. Chloe Fong reports.
There will be anti-epidemic kits for every Hong Kong resident. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said in the past 5 days, the kits were delivered to all those in home isolation or quarantine. Some had complained that theirs arrived after they returned to COVID negative. Lam admitted the delay and pledged to speed up distribution. The kits include rapid antigen test kits, masks, and traditional Chinese medicine. As it is a huge project, the government hopes to enlist the help of non-governmental agencies and ethnic minority leaders. So far, 4 million RAT test kits have been handed to cleaners and security guards of buildings where sewage samples tested positive. Civil Service head Patrick Nip, who is in charge of the vaccination program, said residents of 55% of all homes for the elderly have been vaccinated. Outreach teams will launch the next phase in the coming week and hope to vaccinate 20,000 elderly residents, plus another 5,000 who have recovered from COVID. At the chief executive's briefing today, it was disclosed that over 140,000 serving and retired civil servants were called to action in the fight against COVID. More than 17% of government employees contracted the virus, but 70% of them have returned to work. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Hong Kong's largest mosque is lending a hand in the fight against COVID with the launch of a vaccination center on its premises. The center is open to anyone, but measures are in place to help those with religious or language concerns. Here's Chloe Fong again.
The Kowloon Mosque and Islamic Center is doing its bit against COVID by hosting a BioNTech jab facility open to everyone. On its first day, outreach staff and volunteers were kept busy.
The BioNTech second dose. Yeah, it's a strategic location, I think. Yeah. and especially for the Islamic people here. So the government can provide the vaccine for all people in Hong Kong.
When we go walking from this side, then I just saw the banner and I just take the phone number and take the appointment.
Civil Service Secretary Patrick Nip said during a visit to the mosque that the move will help ethnic minorities overcome language and cultural differences. Lawmaker Nixie Lam said some Muslim women did not feel comfortable getting vaccinated at other centers. The jabs are administered by female staff, but there are separate sections for men and women. Community leader Rizwan Ullah said the mosque will use Facebook and WhatsApp to encourage more people to get anti-COVID shots. As of 4 p.m., about 300 people were vaccinated at the mosque, but Lam expects the number to increase. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
People traveling to the mainland or Macau by land will have to take a rapid PCR test at border control points before leaving Hong Kong. The extra test at Shenzhen Bay Port and the Hong Kong side of the bridge to Macau is free, but takes up to 2 hours. The move, which takes effect on Monday, is aimed at preventing the spread of the virus. Travelers still have to obtain a negative nucleic acid test result and observe quarantine and testing arrangements on the mainland and in Macau. A government vaccine advisor says the city is reaching herd immunity as COVID has infected nearly half the population, according to a University of Hong Kong study. Ivan Hung believes that social distancing measures can be further relaxed in about 2 months after 90% of Hong Kongers receive 2 jabs.
Overall, I think the herd immunity is getting there, especially that we are actually, the currently circulating strain is the Omicron BA.2, which is probably the most contagious strain, and most people have been, infected with that strain. So we are in a much better position to gradually open up once we have lower numbers of new cases, and then the vaccination rate is about 90%, 2 doses.
The mainland has reported its first COVID deaths in 14 months. 2 people died in the northeastern province of Jilin, which is the epicenter of the country's current outbreak. The National Health Commission said one of the 2 was not vaccinated and both had underlying diseases. Locally transmitted COVID cases on the mainland fell slightly yesterday to 2,160. Almost 80% were in Jilin. Overseas now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says it is time for peace talks with Russia as their war enters its 24th day. The fighting has taken a heavy toll on civilians. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine dragged on well into its 4th week, the suffering for Ukrainians continued. In the capital, Kyiv, more residents are becoming homeless as Russian airstrikes targeted residential areas. The mayor was asked whether he felt the attacks on civilians were intentional or accidental.
Huge mistake, destroy the Kharkiv and Mariupol. How many mistakes they do it? How many civilians have to killed? And after that to explain about mistake from Russian forces.
In the nation's 2nd largest city, Kharkiv, at least 1 person was killed and nearly a dozen were injured when Russian shells rained on the Academy of Public Administration. Its flagship building was almost entirely razed to the ground. Surrounding buildings also sustained heavy damage. Rescuers had to dig through huge piles of rubble to find survivors. In a grim message posted on Facebook, Ukrainian Presidential Office advisor Alexei Arestovich said the besieged port city of Mariupol has been lost for good. Satellite images show the extent of damage caused by Russian troops. The city had been a key battle zone as the Russians aimed to cut Ukraine from the Black Sea. Several attempts at a humanitarian corridor had failed before civilians were finally allowed to evacuate.
In an address filmed on the streets of Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky declared the time has come for peace talks with Moscow. Otherwise, he warned the cost would be so high for Russia, its people will not be able to rise again for several generations.
The United States is ramping up efforts to stop China from helping Russia in its war with Ukraine. Chinese state TV released stills of a video call between President Xi Jinping and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden. Xi said China was willing to provide humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, but stopped short of taking sides. He stressed all parties should go to the negotiation table. According to the White House, Biden warned China of the implications and consequences if it went to Russia's aid. They also discussed Taiwan, with Xi accusing some Americans of sending what he called a dangerous and wrong signal to the island. Russian asylum seekers say they've been blocked from entering the United States.
It's unfair because America always was open for refugees. It is a country of immigrants, and look around. We behave ourselves well. We don't run, don't cross the line. We just going in the law.
These are not Russian aggressors here. These are Russian dissidents who are also trying to protest or have opinions in opposition to the Putin dictatorship. They are facing persecution and torture if they are removed to Russia. But Ukrainians are making it in, and Russians are not, because the media situation is not the same for Russians.
This group of over 30 Russian asylum seekers had been camping out for several days at the border between Mexico and the U.S. Many are in a similar situation since Russians do not need a visa to enter Mexico. Demonstrations have been held in major British ports to denounce the sudden decision by a major ferry operator to sack 800 workers and replace them with lower-paid staff.
Well, we want P&O to reverse their decision so that our people are put on board running a safe service. We want our members' jobs back, and we want them to change their position. They've ambushed our people, sacked them, put them on the dole, and that's got to be reversed. And if they won't do it, the government's got to do it.
The mass sackings by P&O ferries also angered the British government, but it admitted there's little it can do. This in turn further outraged the unions, which accused the Conservative government of being too friendly to big businesses. P&O, which is owned by oil-rich Dubai, received a huge amount of money from the British public purse during the COVID crisis. On to the weather now. Expect plenty of clouds and some rain patches tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 21 and 25 degrees. More clouds with some fog after the weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 10. I'm Wynna Wong. Good night.